Fuck, let's get down. She's waiting.
We are talking The Screaming Silence. This is directed and co-written by David Davidson and is a low-budget found footage movie that takes place in Tasmania. Now, the story here, we have these two young American filmmakers who are wanting to make a movie based on one of the filmmakers' relative or descendant who was involved in some type of shady curse, obviously many years ago, and this involves this place in kind of Tasmania. So they get a ragtag group of cast and crew to go and film this particular movie out in the kind of like the outback of rural Tasmania, and of course things start to go wrong. There may well be some truth to this kind of legend, this supernatural curse that has plagued this family and its descendants. What will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So first of all, let's talk about what works. So I think the standout thing for me was some of the location shooting here. Obviously, actually filmed in Australia. There are some fantastic, really quite beautiful shots here of the kind of the wilderness. Obviously, filmed in a kind of location in regards to this really nice kind of natural settings, and there are some, quite frankly, very picturesque shots. Like there's a scene towards the end, for example, they're coming towards this church and it's out in this clearing. It looks fantastic. I mean, there's some really pretty damn good cinematography on display. The movie does have a couple of creepy moments, in particular when it's in the dark. There is a few night scenes here, and there's a good use of sound editing and kind of sound effects here that I think plus those scenes and do make them kind of quite freaky at times. I was surprised how much kind of CGI was in the movie in regards to some of the kind of the more supernatural elements towards the end, and they're a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest with you. I mean, you can clearly see that it's CGI, but obviously I appreciate that it is again a low budget movie, but nonetheless there are some scenes that work better than others. There's one quite again quite kind of an eerie scene where we have all these kind of like these spirit ghosts seem to be walking kind of down this hill that sort of surround them. Again, I thought it was kind of quite a good shot here, quite a good sequence. The acting for some of the cast, I think, is pretty good for the most part, with the exception of the lead actor, which we'll come on to. But yeah, that wasn't too bad, I think, for the majority of the cast there. So what doesn't work? Okay, number one, this movie is way too long. There's simply not enough story to warrant this length of a movie. I mean, it's coming close to kind of 2 hours. It simply didn't need to be this kind of length, unfortunately. Really, the first two acts of this movie needed to be trimmed right down. In fact, the first act is so much filler. I mean, is more or less kind of just set up with these guys trying to find cast members, and I think they try to have a bit of comedy value here, but it just inflates the running time. And on the subject of this, so we have our lead character, and he wants to cast this particular girl in this kind of role. However, in a post-Me Too, society, unfortunately, he comes across as only wanting to cast this girl because he's romantically interested in her. He almost has to badger her into kind of coming in for, reading. That's exactly what he does. He kind of bullies her almost into coming in to kind of read the scripts. He gives every other kind of like female actor a completely different script to kind of act upon, and only gives her the real script. And the way it's filmed, you get the impression he is romantically interested, and I just don't think, with all that's happened with the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, I'm surprised the movie has done this in 2020. It comes across as quite creepy, and on the subject of that, our actual main character is quite unlikable, not just for that reason, But as we go through the movie, he seems very belligerent and kind of, you know, we have a couple of bodies that drop, and they just, I don't know, the reactions aren't quite there. And then there's a hell of a lot of arguing in this movie. Now, I think this is obviously somewhat of an inexperience from the writer-director here, and it's just a kind of lots of going through the motions of what we've seen in other kind of found footage movies. But there's just a hell of a lot of arguing for characters that you don't really like, and we do get a lot of screen time on our kind of two main sort of American actors plus this kind of one Australian girl. But there's a smattering of other characters that are severely undercut in regards to their kind of their development and screen time, and they're obviously the cannon fodder. But it's, again, we're meant to believe, obviously, when these people end up getting killed, that there's an emotional resonance, and there isn't. And the movie's plot is very slight, and it gets quite unbelievable at times in regards to how people will react. Yes, there's kind of supernatural stuff. I don't mean that, but I just mean how people would kind of maybe act in these kind of circumstances. It doesn't really seem a particularly kind of like believable reactions to kind of things that would happen and how people would really be, to be honest with you. So overall, I think this movie has some good technical elements, but I feel the storytelling and the writing here was quite poor, and it severely needed an edit. So I'm going to have to give this one a 3 out of 10. I actually found it quite tedious, to be honest with you. Just punctuated by a few scenes that I think were quite good, but it wasn't enough to really kind of save the movie, in my opinion. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.